Hello amigos, I'm Pablo Garcia, the engineer photographer. Today, we're gonna edit a hummingbird photo. Summertime is hummingbird time, and I've been having a lot of fun photographing these little beauties in my own backyard and getting images such as this one and this other one. And this is the image that I'm gonna edit for you today, beginning with the original RAW file. Well, to attract hummingbirds to my backyard a couple of years ago, I planted something like 7 or 8 different flowering plants that flower from late spring and all the way to the summer. And all these are flowers that the hummingbirds really like. So here's an example of one corner of the yard. I also have 2 different hummingbird feeders, and I'm very good about changing the nectar. In another part of the yard, I have the second feeder, and on this feeder, I install a stick with a couple of nice looking little sticks to use as perches for the hummingbirds. Now, the Rufous hummingbird, the photos that I show you, are very territorial. I get about, I think, 3 different species of hummingbirds that come to the flowers and the feeders. But the Rufous are the most territorial and aggressive, and they're going to protect basically the feeder, and they come and perch on one of these 2 branches. So all I do is I take my camera, and I've been using lately the Canon R7 with the RF 100 to 500 millimeter lens. I put the camera on a tripod, I get a chair, I get a nice book, I stay in the shade, and I wait for the birds to come in and perch on one of the 2. Now for the photo that I show you that we're gonna edit today, it was late in the day, it was hot, so I decided to control the camera with the Canon app on my iPhone. And the Canon app, besides allowing me to see what the camera sees right on the phone, inside the air-conditioned space, I can also have full control of the functionality of the camera, including focus points, exposure, and so on. So that's what I use to take the photo. So the photo we're gonna edit today is this one, but the original RAW file look like this. Now, typically I'll start with some global edits, but I think this photo is well exposed. It really doesn't need any global edits. So I'm going to start by cropping it, reducing the background a bit. I still want to retain some of the character of the perch and put the perch something like that with the L key. I turn the lights off. I think it allows us to better check the composition. Something like that I think is going to work for this image. I don't want the bird too high. I don't want it too close to the right. I think something like that is going to work. Now, Lightroom give us great masks, right? So since I'm not doing global edits, I went straight to the mask. I'm going to do select subject, see what it selects. And it did a very good job at selecting the bird and most of the stick, but not all of the stick. So I'm going to go to the mask. I'm going to do add with the brush, and I'm going to add the areas of the stick or the perch that it didn't select. So now I think we have a good mask. What do I want to do to this area that we just selected? Well, I'm going to increase the exposure just a touch, something like 0.2 or so. I'm going to increase contrast a touch. I'm going to reduce the highlights because I want to bring some of the additional detail on the white feathers. I'm going to, let's see, open the shadows a bit. I'm going to reduce the whites a little bit more and reduce the blacks to bring some additional contrast. Something like that. Now I'm going to go to the effects side, and I'm going to increase texture to enhance the fine feathers of the bird, something like, 30, 40 points of texture. And I'm going to increase clarity just a touch, because if we go too much, I just don't like the results, right? So clarity, you have to be careful. It adds some additional mid-tone contrast, but just a touch. And under color, I'm going to increase saturation, which really, when you go on the positive side, is vibrancy. and just a touch. You don't want to be heavy-handed. Just a touch, something like 50 points of saturation. So if I turn off the mask, that's before the mask, and that's with the mask. Before and after. Now, what is next? Well, I want to work on the background. If I do select background, it probably is going to select the background and maybe this part of the stick. So let's try that. So create a new mask. We're going to select background. And sure enough, it selected that part of the stick. So now we're going to do subtract with the brush. And I'm going to subtract the area that it didn't get right. I'm using the auto mask feature on the brush. So it does a pretty good job of looking for corners. I went a little over with the Alt key. I can add back that area. So now I have a good mask. What I'm going to do for this mask is in tone, I'm going to reduce the exposure just a touch because I want the hummingbird and the branch to stick out a little more. So something like 0.3. And I want to change the color of the background. And to do that, I'm going to go to color and I'm going to use the hue. And I want the color of the background to play better with the beautiful orange color that we have on the hummingbird. So I'm going to move the hue towards the left and you can see how I'm changing the background. I don't want to go too much, just a little bit to where I start to get a little warmer colors, something like that. And the other thing I want to do, since we already went to the trouble of selecting the background under detail, this photo was taken at ISO 1250, so there's a little bit of noise. So I'm going to take the noise slider and move it to the right. I'm going to go to 100%. And by moving the slider to the right, I'm basically removing the majority or all the noise on the background. So what have we done with that mask for the background? So if I turn it off, that's the original background. If I turn it on, that's the new background. Basically, the main effect was to darken it a bit and to change the hue of the background. What else do I want to do? Well, this area here of the hummingbird is a little bit too bright, so I'm going to create a new mask with a brush. And I'm going to paint over this bright area right here. And I'm going to go to tone and basically just bring the highlights down a touch and bring the whites a little bit. Basically, I want to recover some of the detail there in that area. And finally, I want to add a vignette. If I use the regular vignette that is available in Lightroom, it's going to darken all the areas the same way. I don't want that since we have the hummingbird towards one side. So let's create a vignette. So I'm going to create a new mask with the radial gradient. I'm going to put the mask right here where the hummingbird is. Make sure you go to radial gradient here on the right and click invert. So now the areas here in pink are going to get affected. I'm going to reduce the exposure something like a third, 0.3 or so. And I'm going to bring the highlights up about the same amount. Basically, I'm protecting the highlights in that area, similar to highlight priority on the regular Lightroom vignette. So if I turn off all the mask, that's before all the mask, and this is with the mask. I'm going to close the mask area, and we're basically almost done. So now I'm going to do a little bit of healing. So I go to the heal, and there are small distractions that we need to take our time to fix. For example, in this area here, there's a dark spot on the stick. There are a couple other ones. There are little distractions that I think we can very easily fix. You can take your time and evaluate all of them. Here is this white area, and here's another one. Little touches that make the photo really look so much better. Another thing I would like to fix, when we change the hue, we have this area here. There's a little distracting for me. So I'm going to select in this area and I don't like the selection it did. I'm gonna move it over here. I think it looks a little bit better. I mean, you can spend a little more time and, you know, adjust areas of the background to your liking. So far, so good. Finally, let's go to the detail panel to add some sharpening. I'm gonna put it at 100%, and I'm gonna create a sharpening mask. Hold the Alt key, and I want basically the whole background in black. Black areas are not gonna get any sharpening. That also helps with the noise. And then I'm gonna remove a little bit of luminance noise, because even though we remove noise from the background, we still have a little bit on the background and a little bit on the bird. And finally, I'm gonna do some sharpening. I hold the Alt key to get it in grayscale, and I'm gonna increase the sharpening. You don't want to go too much, you start to see halos. And in this case, something like 66 points was good. Do the same thing with the radius. You don't want to buoy too much. So 1.1 looks good. And detail. And you may have to refine a couple of times. Let's look at the amount again. And I think that looks pretty good. Let's look at the image at 100%. And here is the image basically completed. Here we have the original image. They had the bright green background. And after cropping and doing our edits, we finished with this image. Let's go to full screen. Well, amigos, I hope you like this quick raw edit of this beautiful Rufous hummingbird. I'm gonna leave you here with this video I did sometime, my initial impressions of the RF 100 to 500 lens from Canon that give us a lot of flexibility to photograph not only hummingbirds. You can get really up close with that lens, and even though it's not a macro lens, you can use it for close-up work quite well, and also for action photos. I really like that lens. I hope you like this video. Please don't forget to subscribe, send me your comments, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you next time.